Crypto climate change may help you.
Today, Bob Kudla is joining me from TradeGeniusAcademy.com. We wanted to cover a gamut of issues from crop losses, prices of grains and your food staples increasing, cryptocurrency, and how we see the future moving forward in terms of commodities and how our world is going to shift due to the cold, the anomalous events that we're seeing, the volcanic ash in the air, and all of the changes in the shifts in the jet stream.
Hey, Dave. Good morning. I had to get up in the middle of the night finally for you and I to hook up together. I hope all's well. I know you guys have been dodging some earthquakes and hurricanes out there, so you're having your own mini apocalypse out there in Asia.
Yeah, we are. The 6.4 that came, again, there's a few geologists out here that are saying that Taiwan is on a 200-year earthquake pattern. Well, that's pretty interesting because it matches up with the Dalton minimum, a grand solar minimum. And they had volcanic underwater eruptions during that time that were noticeable by passing ships. And it seems that there's a lot of repeats in history happening with cyclical activity. From the modern minimum where we see freeze-out conditions across Europe, again, we start to see the same things. And moving into this, when the economy is getting into a more tumultuous state, prices are rising, economies are collapsing, economies are contracting, global trade's contracting, then suddenly we have the rise of cryptocurrency. Now, I know you also have a signals trading service, and I wanted to get a little bit into that too because this is becoming the new hottest thing, is getting the signals trading sent to your phone. If you're a crypto trader, you're going to want the moves on any of these tokens or coins that are coming out. Depends on what the pairs are, which fan of the top 10 or 20, 50, whatever you're following for the utilization of the coins as we move forward in the crypto space.
Everything's shifting to crypto commodity now anyway, so your timing is absolutely perfect.
Can you define that for me? What do you mean?
Because the fiats are going to become like worthless confetti, the world is going to shift from fiat world to commodity world, and they're going to shift from the banking world to the crypto world because it's non-banking. And so I think those are two secular moves that are in motion right now. And that ties in really nicely to what we do as well at Trade Genius, because we're all about gold, silver, grain commodities, and cryptos. You get to see it in the market. I mean, they had a 10% correction and the world freaked out, and they're just going to start throwing yuan, yen, euros, and dollars at the problem, and it's just going to lift the price of gold and silver and grains and cryptocurrencies. So I think your timing is perfect, and people are going to go from fake to real, and they're going to go from banking assets to non-banking assets. That's my view, and you could see it. I mean, the market sneezed 2 weeks ago, and it went down 10%. Cryptos went up 90. The market starts calming again. People take their money out of the crypto assets and they move it back into the fiat world. And this volatility, that spell's been broken, so we're going to get back to a more normal market. So the cryptos are just going to start trading back and forth, and at the same time, as the dollars around the world continue to become more and more worthless, you're going to see a general lift in the value of what I would call tangible assets. And I view cryptocurrencies as a tangible asset because it has a scarcity factor of the limited amount of tokens secured by the shared ledger and the blockchain where you can't counterfeit it.
The movement of money going into that space. So you see how that is in itself the new medium of trade. And started my Grand Solar Minimum channel. What got me into crypto originally was a gentleman named Jeff, friend of mine, and he was talking about, well, how are people going to pay for all these crops when they get incredibly expensive, when there's food shortages and the economies are crashing like they did in the 1600s, the 1400s, and every Grand Solar Minimum we've seen. So, I sat down for a week or so and I thought, how would people pay for all that? If all the cash is worthless and we really can't use gold or silver except in a regional local area, how are people going to still try to continue trade internationally? And I thought they're going to have to use smart contracts because you can lock in Ethereum and pay for anything on the planet in any country and move it. And we're both guaranteed that same value because we both understand Ethereum in your country and Ethereum on the other side of the world. It's worth the exact same thing, and it's still transferable and usable. I don't care where you're on the planet. So I saw that whole transition of usability globally far outside of the banking control of what everybody deems valuable and all agrees on a global value of a single shall we say, entity, or this time token or coin. So I thought, bing, the light went on. So since that point, I've been into it, and I really see the same thing you're seeing.
What technology are you going to use for the smart contract, like an Enigma?
Solidity at
Yeah.
the moment.
Take a look, just personally, take a look at Enigma. Yeah, MIT guys backing it. They have what's called secret contracts, too. What it is that it's a smart contract, but it's a secret contract. So what you do is, your exchange that you're building, instead of being able to have somebody have a look-see into the transactions happen in Enigma. It has the proof of work, but it just provides the answer to the blockchain. So everything happens outside the blockchain. It goes back into the blockchain, so it's fast and it's secret. That's the next thing you're going to see, the secret contract. You're going to see a lot of off-chain calculations coming. You and I, we see the future together, and I think this whole climate change thing, I think food prices stayed suppressed because I think they were suppressing it. And number two is that there was an anomaly with Russia, where they had 2 or 3 year bumper crop. But this year, I think that whole belt's going to get devastated, Dave. Do you see what's happening in Europe this week?
Oh, I cannot believe the temperatures. It's that whatever was coming up or whatever was budding, if it was pushing buds on any of the orchards, or if anything had come up through the ground and toward of a seedling that bloomed early because of the warmth there, that whatever is up is 100% lost pretty much going through there. You can't go from 45, 50 degree Fahrenheit temperatures to down to minus 40 Fahrenheit in a matter of a day, and then you expect that to survive, and it's going to be like that for days, for 5, 6 days.
Dave, I just, you know Steve Goddard, right? Or even while we're talking, go ahead and just pull up his tweets. He just did one of Europe, and his comment was, if this forecast is true, London would be uninhabitable by the end of the week. It must be brutal. It's all spilling out of Russia. Yeah. People just don't understand thermodynamics. I mean, you can't chill 1/3 of the Earth and not expect it to start sloshing around the world. You know what I mean?
Even the news feeds I've been following are talking about it as being an epochal event, like something that is so historic that's coming up with these temperatures. You saw those animals freezing to death walking, and they just were walking and they froze solid when the rabbit and the dogs and the fox and some other stuff up in Kazakhstan.
It got below zero in the mountains around SoCal. And then also in Kansas, the winter wheat harvest is dead. It's gone.
I saw some devastating images of just purely frozen crops in the field, literally turned to ice further up north around San Francisco.
People probably don't realize that maybe you have new followers. Dave and I, we go back a number of years. We both share a passion. We both came at the climate change from two totally separate directions. Me from trading commodities, and Dave from being in the food business, and became friends. And then we both started growing up our respective online businesses here, and it's just been an incredible journey. And what we do at Trade Genius Academy is that we offer 5 things related to trading. Number one is we have training courses to help people either understand how to trade and how to trade cryptocurrencies. Number 2 is that we have trading rooms that people can go in the crypto side or the stock side. And on the crypto side is that runs 24/7. So the trading room is open because cryptos trade 24/7. We have hundreds of people in that room almost all the time. There's a community of like-minded people. The nice thing about our trading rooms versus trying to go out to some free sites is that these are people that are subscribers. They're vetted. We're all in the same team. We help each other win, win, win. And then our trading team provides signals that we push out to our subscribers when we see something of interest. And in addition to that, we have a piece of software that an algorithm that we placed onto TradingView. And so those are the kind of things that we help people with. And then you can get a combination of everything. And you can do it on the crypto side. You can do it on the stock side. And then you can put it all together. You get consulting from us as well. So that's what we do. How we connect with the Adapt people is that we both share the same future. I think people are way underestimating the impact of the global cooling that's coming. And if people are really confused, Dave, which makes me pull my hair out. I mean, education level of people is really astounding to me, the simplistic way in which they view things. When you go cooling, things are getting colder. But also what people don't understand is the variability of the temperature that really causes the upheaval. As you know, the magnetosphere and the solar winds and all that changes, it as you point out many times, it starts getting loopy in the jet stream, and you start getting weird anomalous events that people don't understand. And I live here in Southern California, and we've had a really, really, really warm November, December, and January, and people are saying, look, see, it's global warming. And I'm like, well, why don't you put up a map of the ice age and see where the ice was and see where the ice was not. And you can see that California, Oregon, Washington, all the way up into southern Alaska was relatively ice-free. How do you think those people got across the land bridge? They couldn't have got across the ice mountain of 2 miles thick. They came across a very dry part of the world. And then in February, the model flipped, because of what's happening in Russia. And now we have extreme cold here in Southern California. You and I were talking before we opened here, is that we're having 20, 30 mile an hour winds here in Southern California. I live along the beach, and 37 degrees with 30 mile an hour winds. Those are wind chills under freezing. And you point out to me some of the crop areas are just freezing up. People don't realize Central Valley is a cold pocket. If it gets cold enough there, that whole valley can freeze. If that whole valley freezes, that's 70% of the fruit and vegetables and nuts for the world. That's calamitous. And you start seeing this stuff. I mean, we've had snow, Dave, last week, all the way down almost 500 feet elevation along the coast, all the way down Southern California. You don't get that. And I was telling you also, too, is that the stratosphere is cooling rapidly. And so things that people just never expect are happening. And you can't wish away minus 90 degrees Fahrenheit in Russia. And they're going to see the cold air spilling out of Russia into Europe. And these things are just crazy cold. And I think people, they've been so inoculated with a lie that I fear that people aren't going to get it. I tell people all the time as a trader, you make money when you see things that you know are convinced are true when other people are convinced they're not, and you have the data on your side. This is how you become very wealthy. And I think between what's happening with climate change and what's happening in cryptocurrency, the nexus of those two are going to provide people with opportunities for great wealth. And when you're prepared, you don't have to panic. And so I've been telling anybody who will listen, I said, look, you need to start getting involved in the cryptocurrency. It's sound money. It's a secular trend. We're going to move away from the banking system to more peer-to-peer and also more true or pure monetary transactions versus the bankers coming in there and constantly counterfeiting. And we're going to move from financial assets back into real assets. When I started this, 2 years ago with Trade Genius, is that the trade is, and it will be, and I'm convinced it's going to be a big winner, is, silver, natural gas, grains, and cryptos. You need to move your assets in those directions because it's going to be cold. We're going to be burning up natural gas like it's going out of style. Silver is the common man's monetary asset, and now cryptocurrencies is going to be the asset that's going to be used for anything international. And then the grains are, you better have assets in grains because your food prices are going to go through the roof. In some ways you're kind of gratified that things are starting to come the way you want to, and then other times you're like, oh, be careful what you wish for because it's not going to be fun.
I can concur on that. And, I'll just even take that one simplest approach at everything. The way that people have been brainwashed for the last 35 years about global warming is the same way that people have been brainwashed since around 2011 with Bitcoin. It was always for terrorists, it was always for black money, it was always for drug buyers, and stay away from it. Like they've convinced an entire generation to stay away from crypto. Just like they've convinced entire generations, plural, that global warming was happening because of CO2. And I personally don't know if this is a test where they're just trying to literally, the survival of the fittest mind moves through to the next series of societies that we're entering. Because what we exist in right now is absolutely, this society is dissolving in front of us, and we're entering something new. So perhaps this is a test for the mind to see who can see through the smoke and mirrors, who can see through the lies, Perhaps that's the whole test for us, is that maybe crypto is the truth. Maybe it is the grand solar minimum. And those people who adopt that are the ones that meant to pass the mental test to get through to the next society. That's maybe, far-fetched thinking, but that's kind of my take on things.
Yeah, and it's not even far-fetched, Dave. I mean, basic common sense. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to look over at Siberia and it's minus 90 degrees, and somebody trying to explain that to you is that's because it's incredible warmth in the world. And, I think the lie is becoming so shrill. I guess I disagree with that people are blind because nobody bought the global warming thing. They just never shut up about it. It's number 19 out of 20 in terms of the things that people in America worry about, Dave. The progressive elites, they just don't stop. If they get any news that's their direction, they pound it. If they get news that's not their direction, they dismiss it. But the people aren't buying it. And the same on the cryptocurrency side, too. If you're under the age of 40, these guys are freaking out at Wall Street because you're under 40, they're not in the stock market. First of all, the Wall Street stole the assets from all these kids anyway. So they already hate government. They already hate Wall Street. And you know where they're putting their money? They're putting their money into cryptos and they're putting their money into marijuana stocks on the stock market. That is it. And I did a video a couple weeks ago. I said, escape from New York. I said, the last place you're going to want to live in about next 2 or 3 years when the blockchain makes the New York bankers irrelevant and that people are spending all their money on food, healthcare, and rent. Wall Street's going to be an unlivable place. And I said, you better sell now while you still can. And because I think that kind of change is going to happen. And what people also don't realize is that, like in trading, just like in the climate, is that it's an escalator up, but it's an elevator down. Look how fast we wiped out 3 months of trading profits in 3 days because everything's been fake. They try to create a Potemkin world here, and once you pull one hair out of the suit, the whole suit could fall apart very quickly. And people need to have alternative assets. And I always tell people all the time, they say, oh, Bob, the grains haven't been doing anything. Well, this year they're up 15% from their bottom. Oh, silver's not doing anything. Well, you buy low, sell high. So natural gas, silver, grains, you move your money into those assets. You want to put more money into Amazon. You know what I'm saying? A retailer going into a recession. People just don't think they have what they call recency bias. So people have a very difficult time seeing the future. That's why what we do and you do is so important. We just got to keep getting people to stop, pause, think, because this stuff's happening, and all you have to do is wipe out one grain region in one part of the world, and any reserves that were out there are gone. And we're seeing it now. They're having, that Russian grain belt going into next year is not going to be benign like it has been for the last 3. They were the marginal producers. Australia struggling, and Kansas, the whole Kansas winter wheat crop is gone. It won't take much for these things to get totally wiped out. And for us in America, the whole upper Midwest is sitting, they're thinking that cold pocket sits through March. So we have a cold pocket here in California. We have a cold pocket here in the north. It doesn't matter what happens along the eastern seaboard. We don't grow any food there really, and in Florida and in, the southern states. It's what matters to us in America is, what happens from Oklahoma north and from Colorado to Indiana. And if that area gets slow and California stays cold, and more importantly, cold and dry, I mean, that's the worst situation we can possibly have, is that, if it's warm and dry, you can always irrigate water in. But if it's cold and dry, things aren't going to grow. So, and you don't have water to boot. So I think it's going to be, these things could be pretty calamitous, and so you need to be prepared. And if you can't fight it, you better be able to have assets to pay for it, and that's where we come in.
I also wanted to add in a little point there about, you're talking natural gas, oil, these types of commodities going price up. The price of natural gas is just astounding, the rises. But with this grand solar minimum and the cold that we have endured through a couple of storms in the U.S. and Canada, has taken us to near grid down situations. I mean, in the southeast U.S. and also in Texas, Around Atlanta, they were literally one substation from going down, taking the entire grid down due to the all-time record usage to heat homes. We saw that in Texas, all-time record usage within just a sliver of the grid going down because they really were going to have to cut off because too much pull. And then we saw the same thing up in Canada. We saw the same thing in Manitoba. And then up the nuclear power station, for some reason, power went on emergency generators. And you see this again and again. Our grids are so fragile anyway. I mean, having electricity is one of the basics that we have to have. So when we talk about natural gas and oil itself, but I mean, look at how close we are. The effects of this grand solar minima already, and we are just in the first couple of years of this. We've got to go down into the depths yet. We're not even close into the cooling part yet. And with the wipeouts coming in Europe, I mean, this is something that they're talking in like an epical event. There's really something in a once in a 1,000-year event of cold coming there this. If I could add in one last thing about the millennials. I was an advisor on Anchorus, which is an ICO, as a token offering that I worked on last year in September. Because of that, I get invited to a lot of conferences still, and people invite me, and if I'm in regional Asia, I'll fly out if I think it's something interesting. Well, one of the ones I went to last time pegged exactly what you're talking about. They went through what was considered wealth and storage of wealth through generations all the way back through since World War II. And it went from gold and silver, that was the metals that were considered sacred, and that was the store of value. And then we came up, and then it was equities and stocks in the 1980s and the baby boomers. But then when we came into this current millennials, they consider only crypto as a store of value. They don't trust anything except you can put it in your hand or it's on a digital ledger that's outside banking control. And that was the whole thing, was the way that he broke it down and the way they're going into their highest earning years. And how these two overlap into the amount of purchasing power that would have generally been funneled into the traditional, investment system for a full generation of people coming up is now going to be funneled over into crypto. So what will you consider that new money coming in to keep the old system propped up is going to evaporate because the millennials are taking all that money out of what would have gone into the stock market or has gone into the stock market for the last 80, 90, 100 years of generation after generation, putting the money back in. It's evaporating. It's coming out now because the millennials don't find safety in that any longer. And it was one of the most fascinating, hours that I listened to about this person's in the demographic cliff that we're on about, and what just the storage of value for.
Yeah, and the kids don't care. I have a daughter now that's 17. When she first got her job, she got her first check. She was pretty excited because she took what her hourly wage was and how many hours she worked, and she said, I'm going to make this much money, and she got her check and it was less, and she was really mad. She didn't understand. I looked at it, I said, those are taxes, honey. And she goes, why did they steal from me, Dad? That was her word. Why did they steal from me? She sees no value in what the government offers. These kids aren't into the wars. They don't understand why these people in government spend money that they see no value to, and in school, these kids are extremely libertarian minded. It used to be the war between the left and the right. Now the war is between the elite and the indifferent, and they're going to lose to these kids because these kids are not. They don't fight. They just opt out, and you can't fight indifference. You can't make people interested if they don't trust you. And, look, my daughter lives on a phone. I mean, that's her life. I mean, she watches movies on it. She does her banking transactions on it. To her, a cryptocurrency to move money peer to peer, it's like breathing for her. And they don't even blink. My daughter has cash when she needs it sometimes, but to her, that's like an exception, not the rule. So they totally trust these digital devices. And I just think it's the harder these guys push to try to keep people into the banking system, the more it's going to slip through their hands like water slipping through somebody trying to squeeze it. So they're in big trouble. And here in the U.S., there's the Gandhi principle, right? They try to berate it, like you said, and then they try to ignore it, and then they try to say it's illegal, and now they're accepting it because they know that they're not going to win this battle. And you see now how many countries now in the last 2 weeks, Iran, Turkey, Venezuela, they're all going with crypto coins.
And you forgot China in there. You forgot China. That's a big one.
How can you trust a government issuing a token? It's like them issuing a coin. You know what I mean? And so I think people are still going to gravitate towards the decentralized coins and tokens like Bitcoin, Litecoin, et cetera, et cetera. But what's interesting with these countries now doing these coins is that this is how they want to get away from U.S. sanctions. So a tool that the U.S. have used to control countries around the world is going away. They use the SWIFT system to basically behind the scenes to beat people into submission, and not just America. The Brits are in there too, and the Europeans are in there too. And if you think the U.S. is bad, I think the Europeans are insidious. I think they use the United States as mercenaries. They hide behind us, and I think they cause a lot of tumult in the world. And I think all that goes away when the SWIFT system breaks down and we go peer-to-peer. So no doubt, Dave, I don't know what's going to happen, but all I know it's Goldilocks is gone. It's going to be a brave new world on many levels. And when the world is less calm, the stock markets can't hold their value. People are going to get scared and they're going to pull out. So I'm looking for the stock market to be dropping minimum 30% over the next 12 months, minimum. It could be more. And I don't care how much they try to inflate. People are going to move money out of the stock market. They're going to move it into commodities, and they're going to move it out of the banking system. They're going to move it into cryptos. I am convinced that's what's going to happen. And food prices are going to keep the United States from devaluing their dollar because it'll cause pain. There's 19 countries that link their currency to our dollar. That's what happened with the Arab Spring in 2011. We had that little burst of La Nina that caused food shortages, that caused food prices to rise, and we were devaluing our dollar. We had to do a complete U-turn. And when we did that, we had the 2011 flash crash. Remember when we lost like 25% in like an hour in the stock market? That was really the price, and then they went back in and again. So, like I said earlier, it's like Potemkin. The fair value of our stock market is 30% less, and they suppress all the things from a producer standpoint. And one thing we didn't talk about is that with the cryptocurrency is that the power goes back to the producer, and it leaves the middleman. So I always talk about when I do my interviews and my videos, and anybody who will listen to me, is that cryptocurrencies basically are parasite eliminators. So anybody that has a centralized database or has a monopoly on a transaction profits from that. And, for example, and you and I, we'll talk about what you and I trade the most is in the commodity space. Let's say the farmers are harvesting their wheat. Well, Wall Street comes in there and they just pound the futures market with naked short contracts, which means they're selling something they never owned in the first place in order to drive the price down below where it should be from a fair value. And it's just like playing poker. If you have a big enough stack, whether or not you have a best hand or not, you can bluff somebody out of a position because they can't absorb the loss if they're wrong. And that's what the Wall Street has been doing for a century. I mean, the movie The Wizard of Oz, that was all about that. The bankers in New York and in Chicago were just beating the farmers in the upper Midwest into submission because they would just not pay the farmers the price for their crops, and they forced the farmers to pay, below average prices, and then they profit the difference because at the retail level you never saw the gains. Well, you get a cryptocurrency blockchain of all the farmers in the upper Midwest, and they say, well, we're selling directly to our end buyer, and oh, by the way, you can't sell a contract unless you own one. You can only own a contract if you own the crops. So it's just going to devastate these speculators. And, I don't care what it is. You take it grain, oil, gold, silver, and all of a sudden people who produce things are going to be making more money. And the people who've been sitting in the middle of these transactions are going to get wiped out. But it's not just that. You look at social media, right? You got Google, you got Facebook, you got Twitter. They have centralized databases. They're controlling what people see and hear. They're controlling the narrative. They're blowing away users if they don't like it. They're taking away how much money people can make because they determine through some opaque algorithm that advertisers aren't going to pay for that stuff. Well, when you go to decentralized distributed database for social media, you as the owner of the content are the one that's going to get paid. And you're going to also be the one that's going to determine, and with the advertisers, you're going to get paid to allow them to advertise to you. You know, that's like we talked about beforehand, when you get paid to participate. And so you're going to see that social media is going to change radically. And then this whole industries are going to change, Dave. I mean, if you're in the escrow business, or you're in the title insurance business, your models are getting blown up, because I don't want to pay $300 for a title search when the blockchain already tells me I own the property, you know, and there's 11,000 nodes that agree with me.
Yeah, Bob, that's right. And thinking about the possibilities of even where blockchain can take us in the future, there's some applications that we're not even contemplating at the moment. It's just about an equivalent of the 1990s with, say, internet commerce. You know, when the internet first started, even where we are today was unthinkable for even the most wild, outlandish futurists. Blockchain is going to take on the exact same, so you're right, I would call it 3.0 as well. And I do appreciate you spending your time with Bob and I to discuss some of the most important issues of our time. Again, you can find Bob Kudla at TradeGeniusAcademy.com. You can find myself, David DuByne, at Adapt 2030, Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 channel on YouTube. And oilseedcrops.org, the website where there's a full Grand Solar Minimum resource page for you.